No. What's happening to me? The moon. She chooses you. No longer bound.
Who is she? You will not touch her! Let me pass, Rowan. She needs aid. No. She is under my protection.
The first lie Elara Ashbourne ever believed was that she had been born wrong. Not ugly. Not weak. Wrong. For 23 years, everyone in House Ashbourne repeated that lie so often it became the only truth she knew. Her father never called her his daughter in public. Servants were forbidden to speak her name unless absolutely necessary. Every portrait hanging inside the manor had been painted without her. If strangers visited the estate, they were told the western tower was abandoned. It wasn't. She was simply hidden inside it. 3 rooms, 1 bedroom, 1 library, 1 narrow balcony overlooking a forgotten garden where a dying white willow struggled to bloom every spring. That tiny world was all Elara had ever known. She wasn't chained. The doors were never locked. She had once asked why she couldn't leave. Her father had smiled with practiced kindness. Because the outside world isn't safe for someone like you. She had believed him. Children always believe the people who teach them what the world looks like. Years later, she stopped asking. Books became her only companions. History, astronomy, ancient wolf legends. She knew every constellation above the kingdom despite never standing beneath the open night sky. She could identify every noble bloodline despite never meeting a single noble. She knew thousands of stories. None of them belonged to her. On the night everything changed, the moon arrived. Not an ordinary full moon. The white sovereign moon. A celestial event that appeared only once every generation. Throughout the kingdom, festivals erupted. Bonfires. Music. Wolf clans celebrated until dawn. Inside the western tower. Silence. Elara sat beside the window copying old astronomical charts when something strange happened. The ink bottle beside her trembled. At first, she thought the table was shaking. Then the glass cracked. Not from pressure. From resonance. A low vibration spread through the room. The candles bent toward the moonlight instead of away from it. The air itself seemed to breathe. Her heartbeat followed. Slow. Then faster. Then impossibly fast. She stood. Her knees nearly gave way. Heat raced beneath her skin. Not painful. Awakening. As if every heartbeat whispered the same forgotten command. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Outside. Somewhere below. She heard hurried footsteps. Voices. Her father's. Seal the western gate. Another voice answered immediately. The silver restraints. All of them. A pause. What if we're too late? Her father's silence lasted only a second. But it was enough. Then pray she never reaches the city. Elara froze. She had never heard fear in his voice before. Not once. She quietly stepped toward the wall separating her room from his study. Another sentence drifted through the stone. We should have ended this 23 years ago. Silence. Then her aunt whispered. The prophecy said the white heir would awaken only beneath the sovereign moon. We burned every record. We erased every witness. No one can know. Elara's breathing stopped. White heir. Who were they talking about? Certainly not her. Her father had spent her entire life explaining she was defective. Broken. A burden. Not an heir. Her hands began glowing. Not brightly. Just enough for silver veins to appear beneath her pale skin. She stumbled backward. The room suddenly felt far too small. The ceiling lower. The walls closer. She reached for the window to steady herself. The moment moonlight touched her fingers, everything exploded. Not the room. Her senses. She could hear wolves howling dozens of miles away. She smelled rain beyond the mountains. She heard servants whispering 3 floors below. She heard her own heartbeat. And another heartbeat. Deep. Ancient. Waiting. Something inside her answered. For the first time in her life. She wasn't afraid. She was furious. Not because she'd been imprisoned. Because she believed she deserved it. The balcony doors burst open without anyone touching them. Wind rushed inside. Her silver hair lifted into the night. Far across the kingdom, every wolf suddenly stopped. Hunters lowered their bows. Children woke from sleep. Ancient wolves hidden deep within forgotten forests slowly raised their heads toward the same moon. Something impossible had awakened. Back inside the manor, her father kicked open the tower door. Elara, she turned. For a single heartbeat. He looked terrified, not of losing her, of what she had become. Stay where you are. He reached forward. Too late. A blinding white light swallowed the room. When it faded, the tower was empty. Only shattered windows remained. And drifting across the cold stone floor, one single strand of silver-white fur. Cliffhanger miles away. At the very center of the kingdom, the Alpha King suddenly stopped in the middle of the royal festival. His enormous black wolf emerged without permission. Then every warrior around him dropped to one knee. Not before their king, but before a presence none of them could see. The Alpha King slowly lifted his eyes toward the northern mountains. She's finally awake. The royal festival should have ended in celebration. Instead, the music stopped. Every torch around the palace courtyard flickered at the same instant. Hundreds of wolves lifted their heads toward the northern horizon, their ears pinned forward as though listening to a voice only they could hear. King Rowan Blackthorn had spent 15 years leading the strongest wolf kingdom on the continent. He had faced assassins, civil wars, blood feuds, ancient beasts buried beneath forgotten mountains. Nothing had ever made his wolf react like this. His beta stepped beside him. My king, I know. The words left Rowan before the question was even asked. His wolf wasn't warning him. It was searching, almost longing. A feeling so unfamiliar that Rowan immediately distrusted it. Ready my horse. The celebration? It's over. Several miles away, the white wolf ran. She had no destination, no memory, no fear. Moonlight poured across her snow-white fur until she looked less like an animal and more like a spirit racing through the forest. She leaped over rivers she had never seen, crossed cliffs no ordinary wolf could survive. Every creature moved aside before she reached them. Even the old bears left their caves without understanding why. The forest itself seemed unwilling to stand in her way. Inside the wolf's mind, there were no words, only instinct. Freedom. For the first time in 23 years. Nothing surrounded her except the night sky. No walls. No whispers. No one telling her she was broken. She kept running simply because she could. Back at Ashbourne Manor, Lord Cedric Ashbourne stood in the destroyed tower chamber, staring at the shattered balcony. His hands trembled. Not from grief. From calculation. His sister closed the door behind her. We've lost her. No. Cedric's voice was frighteningly calm. We've lost control. A long silence filled the ruined room. Finally she asked, what happens if the crown finds her first? Cedric looked toward the distant moon. They must believe she's unstable. They must never learn what she truly is. And if she remembers? His jaw tightened. Then we make certain no one believes her. Meanwhile, Rowan's riders crossed the royal forest before dawn. Not once did his wolf allow him to slow. The strange pull inside him grew stronger with every mile. His beta rode beside him. You think this is connected to the white sovereign moon? I don't believe in coincidence. You think it's an enemy? Rowan didn't answer immediately. I think. He frowned. Someone has been hidden from this kingdom. The words surprised even him. He couldn't explain why he believed them. He simply did. Hours later, the first villagers began reporting impossible sightings. I saw a white wolf. No ordinary wolf. It crossed the river without making a splash. It looked straight at me, and I forgot how to breathe. Most dismissed the stories. Festival wine, exhaustion, moonlight tricks. But one old woman quietly closed her market stall after hearing the third account. She disappeared into her home and unlocked a wooden chest hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside rested a faded tapestry nearly a century old. The embroidery showed a silver-haired woman standing beneath a white moon. Beside her, a wolf made entirely of light. The old woman whispered words her grandmother had once forbidden her to repeat. The white blood has returned. Then she crossed herself in fear. Just before sunrise, the white wolf finally slowed. She stood atop a rocky ridge overlooking the kingdom's capital. Thousands of rooftops stretched beneath the morning mist. The city, she had never seen it. Some forgotten part of Elara stirred. A faint memory. Books describing crowded streets. Children laughing. Bakers opening before dawn. She wanted to see it. That single innocent desire became enough. The wolf descended toward the city. At the Eastern Market District, Merchants had only begun arranging vegetables and bread when a blur of white crossed the rooftops. One lantern crashed. A wooden cart rolled into another. A frightened horse reared. People screamed. The wolf never attacked anyone. She simply kept running. Curious. Overwhelmed. Every new scent pulled her another direction. Everything fascinated her. The city had become one enormous puzzle she couldn't stop exploring. By the time soldiers arrived, 3 streets had been overturned. Fruit rolled across cobblestones. Colorful festival banners hung torn between rooftops. No blood. No bodies. Only confusion. Then, the moon disappeared beyond the western mountains. Everything changed. The wolf stumbled. Its breathing faltered. Pain unlike anything before tore through every bone. White fur dissolved into pale skin. The transformation struck harder than lightning. Elara collapsed onto the cold stone street. Barefoot. Shivering. Completely unconscious. The city slowly gathered around her. A merchant removed his cloak and covered her shoulders. Nobody understood why. She simply looked. Lost. Not dangerous. Just heartbreakingly alone. Nearly 20 minutes later, King Rowan finally entered the ruined marketplace. His soldiers immediately began inspecting the damage. Broken carts. No casualties. Minimal destruction. Looks more like. His captain hesitated. Someone running without knowing where they were going. Rowan didn't answer. Something else had caught his attention. At the center of the empty street lay a young woman wrapped in a merchant's worn cloak. Silver-white hair spilled across the stone like fresh snow. Her feet were scratched and bleeding. Her breathing was calm, peaceful, as though she had finally escaped something much worse than exhaustion. Rowan slowly walked toward her. The closer he came, the louder his wolf became. Not growling, not warning, recognizing. He knelt beside the unconscious stranger. The instant his hand hovered above hers, his wolf bowed. Inside him, for the first time, the king of the Blackthorn Wolves felt his own alpha instincts submit to someone else. His eyes widened. Impossible. There had never been another alpha above him. Never. Until now. Just then, a frantic voice echoed from the edge of the crowd. There she is. Lord Cedric Ashbourne forced his way through the gathering citizens, flanked by armed servants. He immediately lowered his head respectfully toward the king. My deepest apologies, Your Majesty. My daughter suffers from a severe mental condition. She escaped confinement. During the festival, we've come to take her home. Rowan remained kneeling beside Elara. He looked once at the unconscious woman, then slowly raised his eyes toward the man claiming to be her father. He noticed something strange. The daughter lying unconscious looked peaceful. The father standing before him looked terrified, not worried, terrified. And Rowan Blackthorn had learned long ago. Fear often revealed the truth before words ever could. When Lord Cedric Ashbourne heard the Alpha King say those 5 words, "She isn't leaving with you," the entire marketplace fell silent. Even the merchants stopped gathering their scattered goods. Cedric recovered first. His expression never cracked. He had spent decades mastering the face of a reasonable man. "Your Majesty," he said with practiced humility, "my daughter is ill. She has suffered episodes like this since childhood. She requires familiar surroundings." Rowan didn't move. He remained standing between Cedric and the unconscious woman. "What illness?" Cedric hesitated. It has no official name." Rowan's eyes narrowed. "Convenient." A ripple spread through the watching crowd. Cedric noticed it immediately. Public opinion. The one battlefield no noble ever ignored. He softened his tone. "My king, our family has cared for her every day of her life." Before Rowan could answer, an elderly baker stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. "Begging your pardon, Your Majesty." Everyone turned. The old man nervously removed his cap. "I've baked on this street 42 years. He looked toward Elara. "That young lady didn't hurt anyone." He pointed toward the broken carts. "Everything broken. Looks like someone trying not to hit people." Several merchants exchanged uncertain glances. One woman slowly nodded. "He isn't wrong. My daughter was standing right there." The fruit seller pointed toward the corner. The white wolf jumped over her. "It could have killed her. It didn't." Another voice joined. "It avoided every child and every horse." Soon, more people began speaking. Nobody had planned it. Nobody even knew each other. But every witness remembered the same thing. The destruction looked strangely careful. Rowan listened without interrupting. Cedric realized the conversation was slipping beyond his control. We'll pay for every damaged stall. We'll compensate everyone. Please allow us to take my daughter home. Home. The word echoed strangely inside Rowan. He looked down at the unconscious girl. For some reason, the word didn't fit. Nearly an hour later, Elara awoke inside a royal carriage. Soft blankets. Warm. Air. The steady rhythm of horses beneath wooden wheels. For one terrifying second, she believed she had dreamed everything. Then she noticed the embroidered royal crest sewn into the curtains. Not home. A knock sounded against the carriage wall. You awake? The voice was calm, deep. She hesitated. Yes. The carriage door opened. The man from the marketplace stepped inside. Without armor. Without attendants. Without ceremony. He carried a wooden tray. Fresh bread. Cheese. Steaming tea. You haven't eaten. Elara stared. No servant had ever carried food to her personally. Never. She instinctively reached for only the smallest piece of bread. Rowan noticed. You can eat the rest. She looked confused. I'm not sure I'm allowed. The words escaped before she could stop them. Silence. Rowan simply looked at her. Not with pity. Not with disbelief. Only curiosity. Allowed by whom? She lowered her eyes. She didn't know how to answer. Because the answer sounded absurd. Everyone. The rest of the journey passed quietly. She ate every crumb. Very slowly. Almost apologetically. Rowan pretended not to notice. But he remembered. Every movement. Every hesitation. Every time she glanced at the tray before taking another bite. People who grew up hungry always looked at food differently. By afternoon, the royal castle appeared beyond the hills. Elara had imagined castles before. Nothing prepared her. Massive stone walls shimmered beneath winter sunlight. Silver banners floated above ancient towers. Hundreds of wolves trained inside the outer courtyard. Servants crossed bridges carrying books, flowers, armor, supplies. It wasn't simply large. It felt alive. The gates opened before the carriage even stopped. Not because of her. Because of the king. Yet she couldn't stop staring. She had never passed through any gate willingly before. Inside, the royal physician examined her feet. They'll heal in 2 days. No interrogation. No accusations. Only treatment. Afterward, a young maid guided her toward prepared guest chambers. Guest. Another unfamiliar word. The room overlooked the eastern gardens. One entire wall consisted of windows. She stood. Frozen. So much sky. The maid smiled. Would you like the curtains closed? Elara answered immediately. No. Too quickly. She blushed. I've just never. The maid understood before she finished. They'll stay open. That evening, Rowan called a council meeting. His beta looked around the table. So, who exactly is she? Nobody answered. One commander finally spoke. We searched the Ashbourne records. Nothing. No illness. No physician reports. No witnesses. It's almost like she never officially existed. Rowan looked toward the fire. Exactly. Someone had erased her. The question was, why? Elsewhere. Inside Ashbourne Manor. Cedric stood before a hidden fireplace. The flames reflected across an iron safe built into the stone wall. He unlocked it using 2 different keys. Inside rested a leather journal. Nearly 100 years old. He slowly opened it. A single family crest appeared on the first page. Not Ashbourne. Another name. Painstakingly scratched away with a knife. Yet one sentence remained untouched. The white blood must never return to the throne. Cedric closed the journal immediately. His hands shook. Someone knocked urgently. My lord, the king's investigators have arrived. Cedric closed the safe, locked it, smoothed his sleeves, then smiled. Let them search. They'll find exactly what I want them to find. Meanwhile, Elara wandered the castle after sunset. She wasn't trying to explore. She simply couldn't sleep. Every hallway fascinated her. Portraits, windows, ancient stone worn smooth by generations. Nobody stopped her. Nobody told her she'd gone too far. She eventually found herself inside the royal library. Her breath caught. Thousands. No, tens of thousands of books. She stepped inside as though entering a sacred temple. Her fingers brushed across worn leather spines. History, astronomy, genealogy, ancient kingdoms, wolf biology, moon cycles. Her heartbeat quickened. She forgot the castle, forgot the king, forgot herself. For the first time, She wasn't reading because she had nowhere else to go. She was reading because the world had suddenly become larger than 3 rooms. She pulled down an old volume about celestial phenomena. As she opened it, a folded parchment slipped from between its pages. Not part of the book. Someone had hidden it there. She unfolded it carefully. Across the top, written in faded ink, were 6 words that stole the air from her lungs. Only the white heir can awaken. The rest of the page had been deliberately torn away. At that exact moment, outside the library, Rowan stopped walking. He hadn't intended to come here. Yet something, some instinct, had led him to the door. He watched through the narrow opening. The silver-haired girl stood completely absorbed in an ancient manuscript. Moonlight poured through the towering windows behind her. For just an instant, her silver hair reflected the light so brightly that the room seemed filled with living starlight. His wolf whispered only one sentence. Not a command, not a warning, a certainty. Protect her. By sunrise, the castle no longer felt the same. No one could explain why. Nothing had changed. The guards followed their usual patrols. The kitchens filled with the smell of fresh bread. Messengers rode through the eastern gate carrying sealed reports. Yet beneath the ordinary rhythm of the kingdom, something invisible had shifted. It was the feeling people had before a storm, when the sky still looked clear, but every instinct insisted the weather was about to change. Elara had spent almost the entire night inside the royal library. The torn parchment still rested on the table before her. Only the white heir can awaken, nothing more. The lower half had been ripped away decades earlier. Not worn, not damaged by time. Removed. Deliberately. Someone had wanted the sentence to survive, but not its ending. She carefully compared the handwriting with several historical records nearby. The ink matched documents nearly 100 years old. Whoever had written it had expected someone to find it. Eventually, a quiet voice interrupted her thoughts. I wondered if you'd still be here. Rowan stood in the doorway carrying 2 cups of hot tea. No guards. No royal attendants. Just the king. He placed 1 cup beside her. You didn't sleep. She shook her head. I found questions. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. I suspected you would. Instead of asking for the parchment, he sat across from her. What do you think it means? Elara looked back down at the faded words. I don't think. She hesitated. I think someone wanted history to disappear. Rowan remained silent. She continued. When people erase the ending of a story, they're usually afraid of how it ends. Rowan studied her for several seconds. Most nobles search for power. Most scholars search for knowledge. Elara searched for patterns. It was different. Dangerously different. Meanwhile, deep beneath the castle, the elderly royal archivist unlocked another chamber. Dust filled the air as ancient shelves emerged from the darkness. Scrolls, ledgers, royal decrees, centuries of forgotten history. Only 3 people in the kingdom possessed keys to this room. The archivist, the reigning king, and the royal seer. The old man slowly removed a sealed wooden case. Across its lid appeared an ancient symbol Rowan had never seen before. A white wolf, standing beneath a crescent-shaped moon. The archivist whispered, I prayed this day would never come. Elsewhere, Lord Cedric Ashbourne welcomed the king's investigators with flawless courtesy. Every room had been cleaned. Every servant rehearsed. Every document prepared. The investigators searched for hours. Medical records, family histories, financial accounts. Nothing. Everything appeared perfectly ordinary. Too ordinary. Captain Aldrin noticed something strange. A manor this old should have contained decades of household records. Children's tutors, guest registries, estate repairs, winter inventories. Instead, entire years were missing. He turned toward Cedric. Where are the archives before year 312? Cedric answered without hesitation. A fire. When? Many years ago. Were any copies made? No. The answer came too quickly. Aldrin said nothing, but he wrote 1 word in his notebook. Impossible. Back at the castle, the archivist placed the wooden case before Rowan and Elara. Neither spoke. The old man broke the wax seal with trembling hands. Inside lay a beautifully illustrated manuscript. The pages were astonishingly well preserved. Across the first page, written in gold ink, appeared a title no one in the room had ever heard. The Covenant of the White Crown. Elara frowned. I've never seen this referenced. You weren't supposed to. The archivist's voice barely rose above a whisper. It disappeared 91 years ago. Rowan slowly opened the first chapter. The room fell silent. The manuscript did not describe a royal family. It described a balance. Long before the kingdom had a throne, there had been two sacred bloodlines. The Black Crown, rulers, warriors, protectors of the realm, and the White Crown, not rulers by force, but guardians of something older. The ancient bond between wolves, moonlight, and the land itself. Neither bloodline could stand alone. Together, they maintained harmony. Separated, the kingdom slowly weakened. Rowan turned another page. His breathing slowed. The final paragraph had been crossed out with thick black ink. Not enough. Beneath the ink, faint words remained visible. Elara instinctively reached for a nearby candle. She tilted the page toward the flame. Letters slowly emerged. The White Crown shall never seek the throne, yet the throne shall always recognize the White Crown. For authority and legitimacy are not the same. Nobody spoke. The implications settled over the room like falling snow. If this manuscript was genuine, then someone had erased half of the kingdom's history. Elara finally broke the silence. My father knew. She wasn't asking. She was remembering. The sealed rooms. The lies. The constant insistence that she was broken. Not because she was dangerous. Because she was evidence. Evidence that history had been rewritten. That afternoon, a messenger arrived from the capital. His horse was exhausted. He dropped to one knee before Rowan. My king, there has been another incident. What kind? The messenger swallowed. 3 elderly villagers from different provinces have independently reported the same story. They each claimed to remember. A white queen. The room became still. They insist she existed. They insist everyone once knew her. And now, they cannot explain why every record of her has vanished. Miles away, inside Ashbourne Manor, Cedric stood alone before the hidden safe. His hands no longer trembled. Fear had become resolve. He opened another compartment concealed beneath the false floor. Inside rested a small silver dagger. Its blade carried ancient runes. Not a weapon of war. A ceremonial blade. Used once. To sever bloodline claims. He stared at it for a long time. Then quietly said, if history refuses to stay buried, I'll bury the last witness. That same evening, Elara wandered into the eastern garden. Winter flowers struggled beneath thin layers of frost. She knelt beside a dying white lily. Almost without thinking, she touched one frozen petal. Warmth spread beneath her fingertips. The frost melted instantly. The flower straightened. Then, another, and another. Within seconds, every frozen flower in the garden bloomed. Guards standing nearby froze in disbelief. One young gardener dropped his watering can. The sound echoed through the courtyard. Elara stared at the flowers in shock. I wasn't trying. Rowan looked at the blooming garden, then slowly looked at her. His wolf already knew. Whatever lived inside her. It had never been about destruction. It had always been about life. The wounded scout died before sunrise. His final warning spread through the castle faster than any official decree. The order had returned. No banner. No kingdom. No standing army. Only whispers. Only disappearances. Only history rewritten so completely that later generations forgot anyone had ever existed. Even Rowan had believed the order vanished decades ago. He was wrong. The council assembled before dawn. Maps covered the great table. Captain Aldrin pointed toward the northern frontier. 3 villages reported strangers asking unusual questions. What questions? Has anyone seen a woman with silver hair? Another commander added, they never threaten anyone. They simply arrive, listen, and disappear before sunrise. The royal archivist closed his eyes. They're searching. Rowan nodded. They already know she's here. Elara stood quietly beside one of the castle windows. Outside, snow drifted gently across the training grounds. Everything looked peaceful. She wondered how many peaceful mornings had existed because someone else's memories had been erased. The thought unsettled her more than the approaching enemy. History could be stolen. Truth could be buried. People could spend entire lifetimes believing lies they had never chosen, just as she had. Later that morning, the royal archivist requested to see her alone. He led her deep beneath the castle, far below the library, past the royal archives, past the forgotten vaults, until they reached a circular chamber carved directly into the mountain. No books, no furniture, Only 12 ancient stone pillars surrounding a shallow pool of perfectly still water. What is this place? The Hall of Echoes. She frowned. I've never read about it. Very few have. The old man smiled sadly. Because it cannot be found. She looked around in confusion. We're standing inside it. Yes. It only appears. To someone it chooses. He motioned toward the center. The water remembers. She hesitated. Memories. Older than memory. Elara slowly knelt beside the silent pool. Its surface reflected only darkness. The archivist whispered, "Touch it." The moment her fingertips brushed the water, the chamber vanished. She stood somewhere else. Not physically. Somewhere inside the past. The sky above glowed silver beneath an enormous white moon. Thousands of wolves filled a vast valley. Not fighting. Kneeling. At the center stood a woman with hair as white as snow. She wore no crown. No jewels. Only a simple white cloak. Yet every alpha bowed before her. The woman slowly turned. For one impossible moment. She looked directly at Elara. Their faces were nearly identical. Not twins. Not mother and daughter. Something older. The woman smiled gently. Then spoke. Not aloud. Inside Elara's heart. They feared what could not be controlled. The vision shifted. Flames. Smoke. Books burning. Royal banners torn down. People scraping names from stone monuments. Children being taught a different history. One sentence echoed through every scene. If no one remembers, it never existed. Then darkness returned. Elara gasped. She found herself kneeling beside the pool again. Tears covered her face. She hadn't realized she was crying. The archivist didn't ask what she had seen. He already knew. The hall shows each person only what they need. She whispered. They erased an entire people. He nodded once. They tried. Meanwhile, Rowan prepared the castle defenses. Extra patrols. Hidden scouts. Signal fires. No panic. Only readiness. Captain Aldrin approached quietly. My king. Say it. If the order truly returns. They won't attack the castle. Rowan looked up. No. They'll attack her. That afternoon, Elara wandered into the royal greenhouse. Not to escape. To think. Hundreds of winter plants rested beneath glass ceilings warmed by sunlight. She knelt beside a withered vine whose leaves had turned brown weeks earlier. Without thinking, she touched it. Life answered. Green spread through the stem. Leaves unfurled. Tiny white blossoms appeared where none had existed moments before. She pulled her hand back. The flowers remained. A gardener watching from across the room slowly crossed himself. I've worked here 30 years. I've never seen anything like that. Elara stared at the blossoms. For the first time, she understood. This power wasn't something she activated. It responded to compassion. That evening, Rowan found her sitting beneath the glass roof, watching snowfall. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally he asked, Are you afraid? She considered the question carefully. I used to think fear meant something terrible was happening. She smiled faintly. Now I think. Fear means something important is worth protecting. Rowan looked at her. You've changed. She laughed softly. No. I've stopped pretending to be someone smaller. The words lingered between them. He realized she was right. She hadn't become stronger. She had simply stopped believing she was weak. Far away, inside an abandoned monastery hidden among frozen cliffs, 7 hooded figures gathered around a stone table. No names. Only titles. At the center rested a faded portrait. A young woman. Silver hair. White eyes. The oldest of the 7 looked at the painting. After 91 years. The white blood lives again. Another asked, What of the king? He protects her. Silence settled over the chamber. Then the oldest figure reached beneath the table. He withdrew a small iron box sealed with ancient chains. The chains opened by themselves. Inside lay a black crystal. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Then the king must learn what every ruler before him eventually learned. The old man's voice became almost gentle. No kingdom survives when the white crown awakens. Back at the castle, just before midnight, a guard rushed into Rowan's private study. My king, what happened? The northern watchtower. What about it? They never saw anyone arrive. They never heard anyone leave. But the guard struggled to breathe. Every guard stationed there has disappeared. No blood, no weapons, no footprints in the snow. Only one message burned into the ancient stone wall. 3 words. Return the heir. The words lingered in the frozen air. They don't want to capture me. Elara's voice barely rose above a whisper. They want me to remember. No one spoke. The wind carried loose snow across the abandoned watchtower, covering the burned message one thin layer at a time, as though the mountain itself wished to hide it again. Rowan turned toward the royal archivist. What does that mean? The old man didn't answer immediately. His eyes never left the ancient stone. Finally, he said, it means we've misunderstood the enemy. On the journey back to the castle, silence rode with them. Captain Aldrin finally broke it. If they wanted Lady Elara dead, they've had several opportunities. No assassins. No poison. No ambush. Only messages. Rowan nodded. They're waiting. For what? Before Rowan could answer, Elara quietly spoke. They're waiting. For me to discover who I already am. Everyone looked at her. She wasn't guessing. Somehow, she knew. Later that afternoon, the royal archivist requested one final meeting. Not in the archives. Not in the Hall of Echoes. Instead, he led Rowan and Elara onto the highest tower in the castle. The entire kingdom stretched beneath them. Snow-covered forests. Frozen rivers. The distant marketplace where Elara had first awakened. The western mountains fading into silver mist. The old man rested both hands on the stone railing. I've served for kings. I've watched wars begin. I've watched kingdoms fall. And after all these years, he smiled gently. I finally understand what our ancestors were trying to protect. Elara looked at him. The white crown. He slowly shook his head. No. Choice. He turned toward Rowan. The black crown was created to protect the kingdom. Then toward Elara. The white crown existed to protect the people. From the kingdom itself. Neither title was greater. Neither bloodline ruled the other. One held power. The other reminded power where its limits were. Together, the realm remained just. Apart, fear always filled the empty space. The old man looked toward the horizon. Your ancestors weren't erased because they sought the throne. They were erased because they reminded rulers that even kings answer to something higher than themselves. That evening, Rowan found Elara once again in the royal library. She stood before the enormous window overlooking the eastern city. The market lights glittered below like scattered stars. You've been here every night. She smiled. I spent 23 years wishing I could see the world. She looked toward the city. I don't think 23 lifetimes would be enough. Rowan stepped beside her. For several quiet moments, neither spoke. Finally he asked, if I had believed your father, if I had sent you back, what do you think would have happened? She thought carefully before answering. The old me would have gone. He frowned. The old you? She nodded. The girl who believed she needed permission to exist. She turned toward him. She stayed in that tower. I didn't. The next morning, before dawn, Rowan kept a promise he had almost forgotten. He led Elara through the eastern gate. No guards followed. No ceremony announced them. Just two people walking toward a waking city. The marketplace was already alive. Bakers carried fresh loaves from stone ovens. Merchants arranged baskets of apples and winter vegetables. Children chased each other between wooden stalls. Exactly as Elara had imagined all those years from her lonely window. She didn't rush. She simply walked, slowly, taking in every sound, every scent, every ordinary miracle. A baker offered her a warm roll without recognizing who she was. Fresh from the oven. She accepted it with both hands. Thank you. The old baker smiled. First time here. She laughed. It shows. You've been looking at everything. She glanced around. I've waited a long time. He chuckled. Then don't hurry. Markets are best when you wander. She smiled. I think. Life might be too. As they continued walking, people passed without staring. No one whispered. No one pointed. No one called her broken. She wasn't a mystery. She wasn't a burden. She was simply another young woman buying bread on a winter morning. The realization struck harder than any revelation. Hidden inside ancient records. Freedom wasn't always loud. Sometimes, freedom looked like nobody telling you to leave. Far above the marketplace, the first rays of sunlight reached the castle towers. The royal archivist watched from the balcony. Captain Aldrin joined him. They look ordinary. The old man smiled. Exactly. For the first time. That's the miracle. Weeks later, the official investigation into House Ashbourne concluded. Lord Cedric was stripped of his authority over Elara. His estate remained standing, but its influence collapsed. The hidden records became public. Scholars began restoring names erased from history. The White Crown returned to the kingdom's chronicles, not as myth, not as rebellion, but as truth. No triumphal celebrations followed. History wasn't repaired in a day. Neither were hearts. Yet every restored page mattered. Every remembered name mattered. Every lie that lost its power mattered. Spring arrived earlier than expected that year. The frozen garden outside the castle bloomed weeks ahead of schedule. Gardeners insisted it was unusual. The royal physician called it coincidence. The archivist merely smiled. Some things didn't need explaining. One evening, Elara stood beneath the great white willow growing inside the castle gardens. Its blossoms drifted through the warm breeze. Rowan joined her. He looked toward the branches overhead. "You know, I've been thinking about something." She glanced at him. "What?" "The first day we met. You apologized for not wearing shoes." She covered her face, laughing in embarrassment. "I can't believe I said that." "I can." He smiled. "You thought that was your biggest problem." She lowered her hands. "So did I." For a moment, they simply stood together beneath the blooming tree. Not as a king protecting a mystery. Not as a forgotten heir searching for answers. Just two people who had found each other at the exact moment both needed to believe that history did not have the final word. Years later, the children of the kingdom would grow up learning a different story. Not the story of a dangerous girl hidden away in a forgotten tower, but the story of a young woman who spent 23 years believing she was broken, until one winter night taught an entire kingdom that the truth can be buried, but never forever. And whenever scholars asked the royal archivist which moment truly changed the kingdom, he never mentioned the Hall of Echoes. He never mentioned the ancient records. He never mentioned the white sovereign moon. He always answered the same way. It changed. The morning no one asked her to leave the marketplace. Because kingdoms were not transformed only by great battles. Sometimes, they were transformed by a single human being finally discovering that she had always belonged.